Hello there, and welcome to the How to Market Your Horse Business podcast. So glad you're joining me here today. As you've likely guessed by now, my name is Denise Alvarez. I get to host you here on the podcast each week. And before I introduce you to this week's guest and my new friend, I will very quickly introduce myself, just in case we're new friends, and then I'll dive right in. As I said, my name is Denise, and I am an equine business coach, which means through my business, Storm Lily Marketing, I get to help dream-chasing entrepreneurs in the horse world to build and grow a sustainable business without burning out. All that I do, including this podcast, is so that you, as an equine entrepreneur, can be out in the barn or the arena, in the pasture, behind the camera, at the computer. You get it. Wherever it is you're serving the horse industry, I want to help you do more of that and do more of what it is that you love so much. And so today we're going to do that by way of talking about retirement planning. Yes, stay tuned. I know this is a topic that many equine entrepreneurs tend to put off because sometimes it can be a little overwhelming for some. And sometimes, let's not just say for some, let's be honest, for most of us, it's a lot to think about. And that's why I'm so excited to bring to you Grace Speckman. She is a certified financial planner who is specifically helping individuals and especially those in the equine space with wealth management, growing their wealth, planning for retirement. And so today on the podcast, she's going to break this down. Now, what's really fun is Grace actually presented to my small group coaching program, the Business Barn Collective, and she did such a great job, and she brought so many helpful tools and resources and numbers and rules in terms of I'll forget it at the moment actually, but the rule of 3, the rule of 7, those types of things that were really helpful and practical. And so she did such a great job there. I said, would you please come on the podcast? Because I think this is a topic that I'd love to go beyond the Business Barn Collective with. So, of course, inside of the membership, it was more in depth. They got to have some one-on-one Q&A time with her. But on the podcast, she still is bringing the practical blended with the strategy. So she's going to talk to us about why your retirement plan goes beyond your business and how we can think long-term and what does that look like practically to build long-term financial security, regardless of where it is on the journey that you are starting from. All right. So you're going to bring, like I said, or she's going to bring the practical and the strategy. So you probably want a notepad handy or a notes app on your phone, but also know that I've got the highlights of the conversation on my website. So if you go to Lily.com/218 for episode 218, then you will find the highlights there and the information, as well as the links to get in touch with Grace if you'd like to dive deeper with her. And then I also want to make sure you know that I have a free roadmap specifically built for equine entrepreneurs who want to grow a sustainable business without burning out. It's going to help you do more of the work that really lights you up, attract clients and customers that you actually enjoy working with, create a customer experience that keeps them coming back, and find the gaps in your business that may be stalling your growth. It's all in my free roadmap, and I'd love to send it to you. So if you go to stormlily.com/map, it's super simple. Then I will send that to your email, or of course, the link is on the show notes as well. Okay, friends, that's it for our intro. Let's dive in. I can't wait for you to meet, get to know, and learn from Grace Speckman. All right, Grace, thank you so much for joining me on the podcast. I am so glad you are here.
Thank you, Denise. I'm so excited to be a guest. I'm so glad that you suggested this, and I'm glad to be here today.
Yeah, I cannot wait for my audience to get to know you and hear all of the great things I know you're going to share. Before we get there, I first want them to get to know you as a person and as a horse person. So tell us a bit
Yeah.
about your background, your personal journey to horses, and then this idea of specializing in wealth and retirement planning for equestrians and also business owners that we're talking today. How did that begin?
Let's do it. Okay, I'll take you way, way back to the horse journey. I'll start with the horses and then I'll navigate to what I'm doing
Perfect.
now. But when I was, I think 7, I went on a family vacation and there were pony rides. So I did some pony ride and immediately got hooked, got home and just harassed my parents to let me take riding lessons. And so I remember My mom and I drove all around town, just popping into stables here and there, and we landed on one called Reinhardt Farm in Westfield, Indiana, so not far from where I live, and I have been there ever since. So, I was that pony kid in the summer there from sunup to sundown, and the discipline, it's a hunter-jumper farm, so I've done the hunters, the jumpers, the eq all through the years, and my first pony, May, was a white Welsh that I got when I think I was 8 years old, and she was mean as hell, didn't have a lead change. She was a fighter and very much a mare pony, so the audience probably knows. Mares and ponies are their own kind of beast,
Right.
but I loved that pony so much. So I still ride today. I haven't owned in some time, but I'm so fortunate. I've got the same kind of barn family, if you will. So I've got plenty of horses to ride, and there's never a shortage of anyone or people offering for me to ride when they're out of town. And I'll show on occasion, which is really fun. And I think anybody listening to this can probably relate. Horses for me shaped so much of my life, and I think some of the key lessons I learned were discipline. It takes grit and a lot of patience, and you have to have partnership with your animal, but also the people that are around you, and communication. And I think all of that applies to the wealth management world as well, or how you think about money too. So they're really interconnected in that way. And Denise, tell me, so remind me, what was your first kind of experience with horses, or what was your first horse? I always wanna know
Oh my
everybody
goodness,
else's
you are
stories.
the first person to ever ask me that on a podcast, Grace,
Let's
ever.
hear
That
it.
is so fun. My first I don't even remember my first experience because I was so young. So
Mhm.
I grew up, we always had horses. My dad, by trade was not a horse trainer, but he did like to raise and train horses for fun and help other people do that. We were from a super small town.
Mhm.
So I truly don't remember my first horse experience, but our first pony, the one that I did ride often, his name was Coco. He was a little pony who was, yes, your stereotypical, ornery. Like, I remember when he stepped on my foot, like, I would certain things that you swear he did it on purpose, you know?
Totally.
Yeah, little things like that. But yes, grew up on the back of him and other horses from as long as I can remember. Yeah, so fun.
I
Yeah,
love it.
no one's ever
I
asked
love
me
it.
that.
Oh, I had to. I had to ask. So it just sets the stage.
And so
And
how did that, yeah, transition for you?
yeah. Yeah, transition for me. So I've been in wealth management for about 9 years now, but I didn't study this in college. My major was psychology and economics. I had no idea that I would be in this space. If you asked me 20 years ago if I'd be doing this, I'd say absolutely not. But here I am, and I absolutely love it. I really started at the bottom in wealth management, which I think helped me because I didn't know anything about this world, and I can understand how intimidating it is. It's really scary when it's so jargony and technical.
Mhm.
So, I had worked in market research and consulting, and then by way of, I guess, networking, landed a job at Merrill Lynch, started from the ground up, and I just really gravitated towards more of the relationship side of the business. So, I was able to kind of jump the ranks and become a financial advisor, and I just absolutely love what I do. And yes, there's a technical element where you have to know investments in the market and all those sorts of things. But at the end of the day, it's a trust job and it's a relationship job. And a lot of the principles I've learned and seen what makes people successful, it's the same whether or not you own horses. A lot of those same principles to wealth and money and savings and retirement, it applies either way. But if I can work with a subset of people that I can relate to and understand and
Yeah.
that I like working with, and hopefully they like working with me too, it just kind of fell into place. Trying to specialize in working with equestrians or equine business owners. And there's a lot of nuances to the
Mhm.
horse world, and I realized there was such a gap. I mean, there's advisors out there who have they're great advisors, but they don't know anything about the horse world, and that can be so important when there's things like horse insurance or liability for your farm or your equine business, and just having an understanding of the world can really make a big difference in people's financial planning. And I'll give you kind of a horror story of what I've heard. I hear people say, my advisor kind of scoffed at me when I said how much I was spending on horses, or they just didn't understand the passion or the importance of it in my life. And that just makes me cringe because as an advisor, I want to listen and understand people and know what matters to you and why. And for a lot of folks and my clients, that's horses. And
Mhm.
yeah,
Yeah.
so you
Well,
you get
that
it. You work in this
understanding
space
piece.
too.
Yeah, exactly. That understanding piece is so important, right? When they come to
Mhm.
you, you have the knowledge, and that's so important, but there are unique nuances that not everybody will understand. So, yes, 100%. That's why I'm a business coach for equine entrepreneurs,
Yeah.
because there is something unique about building a business in the horse world, and that gives people reassurance. And so, again, that's why I
Mhm.
wanted you to share your background. Number one, because I love to get to know people and their story. Everybody's story
Mhm.
matters, and it feeds into what they do in their life and different seasons. And so, also for listeners, it helps them to know you get them, you understand them. And so, of course, today our listeners are entrepreneurs. So, yes, they're horse people. And then they have that added level of niching down, you could say, of being
Mhm.
entrepreneurs in the horse world. And so, talk to us specifically about retirement planning and why it's so important for equine business owners and entrepreneurs.
Mhm. Totally. I think kind of the biggest key sentence takeaway for this group in particular that I will start with, and I might have kind of some winding answers here, but your business is not your retirement plan, it's your income, and there's a difference, and you have to understand that. And I mentioned my background, I studied psychology in college, but I think so much of how you approach thinking about your business or your retirement and savings, you have to zoom out and think about it from a psychology and emotion standpoint because money is all about behavior and emotion, whether it's conscious or subconscious. And I'll just plug 2 books that I found have been super helpful if anybody has an interest in reading them. Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman is a great book on exactly this, just kinda how the brain is wired and how people think and act. And then another one is The Psychology of Money by Morgan Housel, both great reads, and I think anybody can benefit from it.
And
So
I will
I'll
link to those in the show notes, of
Yeah,
course.
please.
Yes.
They're great, great books. And so I think for a lot of entrepreneurs or equine business owners, it's their life is their business. And it's really difficult, just as humans, to think far ahead. We're so hardwired to think, what do I need and what now? And that's just how our brains work. And Denise, you know this, I shared this with your small group, but it's called present bias. And that's where we kind of overemphasize the now and almost that instant gratification, but undervalue those longer term benefits that you should be thinking of. And for this group in particular, that should be your retirement. So you have to trick your brain a little bit and find ways to kind of hack your human nature to think right now. And so one easy way to do that is automate things. And I shared this with your group too, but an easy way to fight that is automate your savings. If it's really difficult to look forward and ahead, do whatever you can to automate some of those systems. That way, you're kind of forcing savings and kind of forcing yourself to think beyond just the present.
That's good. I love that. I wanna go back to thank you for that tip. 100%
Yeah.
the podcast is all about the practical tips, so I hope people hear
Mhm.
that. I wanna revisit what you said because I think that statement is so, so important, and, it may be the first time some people are listening and thinking of it that way. You said,
Mhm.
"Your business is not your retirement plan." Is that how you said that?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
break
Your
that
business.
down for those that are listening and going, "Okay, I need to hear that again
Yeah.
because how else am I supposed to have a retirement plan? My business is my income." So I
Bingo.
know what you mean because you, like you said, you taught inside of the Business Barn Collective, but break down for the listeners what you mean when you say that, when they may be going,
Yeah.
but Grace, this is the only way I'm making money right now. For some people, that is their only income. So what do you mean when you say your business is not your retirement plan?
Yes, I think they can be separate and independent, but they're very much intertwined. So you have to think of how your business can fuel your retirement plan for the future. And, there's a lot of limiting beliefs. A lot of people say, oh my gosh, I just don't have I'm not making enough, or I just don't have enough to start saving, or I'll figure it out later. And what I hear a lot is, I understand my business. This is what I know. This is where I'm putting my money. This is where I'm investing. I just don't understand the stock market or more traditional retirement type of accounts. So why would I put my money there?
Mm.
And there's a lot of reasons to do that because you want to reduce your risk and concentration in your business. So as a business owner, it can be so challenging because your income might fluctuate. It might be seasonal. You might have various cash flows. And a lot of entrepreneurs, you've got the discipline, you've got the passion. You just need the system and the process to separate it out and think of, okay, yes, I have my income, but I also need to segment it into more future looking retirement planning and savings. And the big one I hear is, "Well, I'm not working a corporate job. I don't have an employer that has a 401k for me where I'm kind of being forced to save, or they've just set it up for me, or they're matching my contributions." But the beauty for entrepreneurs is that as a self-employed person, you have access to so many different retirement options, oftentimes with higher contribution limits than those type of employees at a corporate type of job. So think bigger on what your business can do for you. And if you don't even know where to start, Denise, I shared with you, I'll have some links to share in the show resources, but just having an understanding of what type of retirement savings are available to entrepreneurs, things like a solo 401k or a SEP IRA. And I'm not gonna get too jargony on what those mean, but the tax code is really, favorable to business owners in that way, and that there are these structures that you can use to establish those retirement savings and plans. Regardless of how much money you have or how much you wanna contribute, there's probably going to be an option that's a good fit for you. And the other thing too, it's April 15th, it's tax day. So
Yeah.
business owners know um, there are a lot of incentives in the tax code as a business owner. So working with a great CPA, that's not a place that you want to skimp or DIY because the stakes are huge if you make mistakes, but the rewards can be really meaningful. So think about what your business can do in terms of tax benefits too. So there's things like depreciation on equipment, deducting expenses. And again, some of those automated savings that you can set up could be tax deductible. So thinking a little bit outside of your business, how else can I diversify and plan for the future? I know it can be difficult and intimidating and scary, but there are a lot of resources and options available to entrepreneurs and vehicles to save in. And time is your friend. So the sooner you start, the sooner you can get the benefits of, compounding growth. And small changes now can make a huge impact over time. So just starting is part of the key here.
That's so good. For those listening, let that be like your key takeaway. Like I'm going to give you she's going to share us some things to know, lessons learned. But let that be the key takeaway is start now, regardless of where you are.
Mhm.
If you have not yet, begin to think about that. And you've just been thinking about oftentimes, as you said, for business owners, it's the here and the now and then catching up later. And so rather than having a catch up later time, let it start now. I love that. Such good practical advice. Okay,
Yeah.
Grace, given that, I would love for you to share for those who are beginning to think strategically now. They're shifting their gaze to plan for retirement as an entrepreneur. Or some listeners may be going, this is awesome. I'm glad Grace is here. I've been saying this for years, but I'm here to see if there's anything I'm missing. So,
Ah,
both buckets, what are some things to know and lessons that you could share with us?
yeah. I don't know if I have any grand revelations because I think a lot of times with money and finance, it's about consistency. It's not about some crazy loophole or like strategy. I mean, there's tons out there. I can give you all sorts of investment ideas and tax strategies and estate planning, blah, 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 but I'm not going to get jargony there. So I think a lot of this is just coming up with a structure. So I think the first thing, and it's probably no surprise to entrepreneurs. I would be shocked if you haven't had these conversations with your clients too, but it's to pay yourself first. And I hear all the time entrepreneurs, business owners, they say, well, I'm just going to wait until the end of the month or the end of the year to see what's left over. And oftentimes there's nothing left over. So the more you can set up the structure and the process, again, thinking kind of that present bias, a way to fight that is by automating these. So pay yourself first and get consistent about it. It's not really about the size, it's more about setting up the habit and the consistency. And when I say pay yourself, that's not just paying yourself a salary or income. It's also setting aside money to make sure you have an emergency fund. Like that's so basic, but a lot of people don't do it because you want to spend the money, you want to invest it, you want to put it elsewhere. But it's so crucial to have an emergency fund. And the rule of thumb is 3 to 6 months of your known expenses as an individual, but also do it for your business too. So what are your expenses that you need to cover as a business? 3 to 6 months is really the bare minimum. Some folks like having a lot of cash on hand, so you can certainly stretch beyond that. But factor in your emergency fund, any investment savings, so setting aside for retirement, things like that. Make that a business non-negotiable in terms of paying yourself. And again, it's consistency beats size every time. So that would be my first kind of key takeaway.
I love that you're starting with that, and you're right. Sometimes it's the basics. I mean, I talk about this in the Business Smart Collective and the framework that I teach. We start with the foundation, and the foundation is not something that you set and never return to. So whether it's marketing and messaging, whether it's money, whether it's horse training, like you know it when it applies to your horse, the foundation is the foundation, but it doesn't mean you never go back to groundwork. So I love that you started
Yeah.
with that because yes, that's the foundation. You started your business, yes, because it's a passion. Yes, because you love
Mhm.
horses, you love what you do, and it's a business. So it should be
Mhm.
profitable. And that profit doesn't mean you don't get to pay yourself if there's not a profit, right? Like
Yeah.
it's for some people. So actually, let's dig into that for just a second because I think that
Mhm.
for those some listening, that may be a novel idea, and they're going, but Denise, at the end of the month, if I want it to be profitable and then I pay myself, then I'm in the red. So I would say then, right, let's really look at your numbers. Let's really figure out what that looks like because the reality is if you're not paying yourself, then you actually don't have a profitable business. Would you agree with that statement?
I would, and I think you hit the nail on the head. You have to know your numbers. This isn't a guessing game. This is your business, so take it seriously. Whether that's working with a bookkeeper, an accountant, if you need to, maybe you're great at the numbers and already savvy there, but understand your numbers because that can then just set you up to get the structure and the systems in place to make the rest easy and ongoing and consistent.
Yeah. Yes. So, so good. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, Grace, what is your next piece of advice for us?
Yeah, I kind of touched on it earlier, but time is your friend. And, Einstein said compound interest is the eighth world wonder. And I completely agree. So the sooner you start saving and investing, the greater the opportunity for growth. And I'll share just kind of an example. So, a lot of times when people say the market is up or down, we're oftentimes talking about the S&P 500, which is just the 500 largest US companies. So, it doesn't need to be so jargoning and confusing. So, the S&P, for example, going back to 1970 through basically today, has annualized, or at least basically every year on average, has returned 10.9%. And here's where I'm gonna get into my next favorite tidbit, which Denise and some of your listeners in the small group know too, the rule of 72. I love this concept, and if you think it's helpful, I can continue on and share it, but it's one of my
Yes.
favorites.
Go right ahead. Yes.
Okay. So the rule of 72 is basically a cheat sheet calculation to determine how quickly your money will double. So the way it works, you take 72 divided by your expected growth rate or interest rate. So let's just make it super easy. Let's take 72 divided by 10, which is pretty darn close to historically what the S&P 500 has done. So 72 divided by 7.2 or divided by 10 is 7.2 years to double your money. So it's a really simple snapshot and idea to give you just the framework and the power of what saving and compounding does. And I'm going to take it a little bit of a step further and giving you an example of a great retirement savings vehicle that works for a lot of people, and that's a Roth IRA. So let's say you contributed the maximum $7,500 to a Roth IRA invested in the S&P 500 and just let it sit for 20 years. You didn't touch it. And let's assume 10% returns. That $7,500 contribution would grow to over $50,000 without you doing a thing. So that gives you an idea of the power of compounding. And if you step it up a notch and then you consistently make those contributions, so let's say you did the 7,500 every year for 20 years at the beginning of the year, that number now jumps to over $472,000. So small savings, and if you take 7,500, let's do it divided by, I got my calculator here. On a monthly basis, that would just be $625 a year. If you did that for 20 years and you got 10% returns, you've got a nest egg of over $472,000. So if you break it down and just think about that compounding, time is your friend. So that's my second uh, piece of advice. Know that time is your friend.
That's so good. Okay, for those that are listening, Grace, you're saying, okay, time is not my friend. I've waited too long. Give them some advice or words of
Yeah.
affirmation or how you would speak to them if they were sitting across from you at your desk.
It's never too late. It's never too late. You might feel like you're behind, and I hear that often, but there's still ways to be setting aside and saving. You just have to think about what that looks like for you, and everybody's journey is different. So I don't say that you need a 20-year time horizon to save. The sooner you do it, the better, even if you feel like you're late. So
Mhm.
starting now is better than starting never.
Yeah. Oh, that's good. That's good.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
All right. What's next?
Yeah, kind of on the same time theme. I don't want to get into investments too much, but don't time the market. That is just the soundest advice I can give anybody. No one can time the market. If I could, I'd be sitting on a private island somewhere, sitting on a $500,000 horse or whatever. I'd have a whole farm. So don't time the market. What matters is time in the market. So it's another kind of
Mm,
play on time is your friend. So, something I like to say is, the longer you're invested, and if you identify what type of account might make sense for you, the longer you're invested, the higher the likelihood of positive returns. So, it's really important to understand your time horizon and when you might need things, and you might invest accordingly, maybe a little bit more growthy if you've got a long time horizon. Maybe you want to be a little bit less risky if you're going to need the money soon. But I'll give you a quick example. So if your investment time horizon is 1 day just in the equity market, like the S&P 500, it's basically a flip of a coin if you're going to be up or down. But if you bump that to 3 years, your probability of a positive return jumps to 77%. And then 3 years out, it jumps to 88%. 5 years out, it jumps to 93, and then 10 years out, it jumps to 97. So that just illustrates, again, understanding how time operates with your investments and understanding what's appropriate, knowing the longer you're invested, the higher the likelihood for returns. But at the end of the day, the market's going to go up, the market's going to go down. There's always a reason not to invest, but if you can be patient and kind of ride the ups and downs, the market rewards that. The market rewards patient investors.
that's a good word. It reminds me of I don't know if you've ever watched The King of Queens. It's a TV show that
No, I didn't.
like, I don't even remember what year it was, but there was an episode as a husband and wife team, and she got into the stock market, but they were literally like obsessively watching it every
Oh,
day and
don't
buying
do
and
that.
selling it. Yeah. It was like the exaggerated version, but that can be so easy to do, right? Especially if you're
So
just diving in. And so, yeah, that's such sound advice. I love that.
Oh my gosh, yeah, you'll drive yourself crazy. Even looking at your savings account, looking at accounts day over day. I'm not saying ignore your numbers. You got to know what you
Mhm.
have, and especially for
Mhm.
things like savings, but you will go absolutely insane. And you're more likely to act on emotion if you're kind of tracking the wild swings. So
Mhm.
the more you can avoid that, I think the better. Writing things out, being patient, and making sure that you've got an allocation that allows you to sleep at night. That's the key.
Yeah, that makes good sense. Okay, I
Yeah.
realize I asked you for 3 to 5, so I don't know where you landed on your list, Grace. So
That
do
was
you
3, but I've got 5, so if we
Okay,
wanna keep
beautiful.
going.
Yes, keep going.
Yeah. The next one, I touched on it a little bit before, but you want to surround yourself with solid advisors. I think horse people know it's not just about you and your horse. There's often a groom or a trainer or a farrier or a vet behind you that makes the riding successful, whatever type of discipline you're in. There's a whole team behind you. So I think it's really important to be working with knowledgeable advisors who can give you sound advice. And the first one I mentioned is a CPA. The stakes are huge if you make a misstep with your taxes or even thinking about how to structure your business, but the rewards can potentially be really meaningful. So I think having a solid team behind you, like a CPA, an attorney, someone like you, Denise, that can help them think about the business, marketing, you name it, a financial advisor, and maybe you don't meet all those people, but find the ones that are most important to you that will help you be successful. So think about the team around you, who you're surrounding yourself with, or even mentors and just resources. So surround yourself with the right folks. And I think more and more I see so many equine focused like accountants or bookkeepers. So there are people out there who understand your world and can be a great resource for you. So find those people for you that are helping you be successful.
I love that you brought that in, because you're right. It is, especially for entrepreneurs, something that oftentimes feels lonely or feels like you're having to figure all of this out on your own. And it does, like you said, build a lot of internal pressure. And so when you can bring in resources and bring in support, it relieves some of that pressure and allows you to think freely and even brainstorm or think of things new and differently, regardless of which area and direction, right? Marketing,
Yeah.
advice, money, all of those different things. You cannot expect yourself to know everything and carry
You
everything.
can.
And I say that as somebody who is 100% guilty of doing it. And so I know you can't. I know it's not fruitful because we need each other and you need support in that realm for sure.
It's true. And, Denise, so for those that don't know, we met because we were in the same women in equine business. I think I totally butchered the name. But there's this group that we both found on LinkedIn. There's also a Facebook group. I think you should link it in the show notes. But we
Yeah.
met through this kind of a co working session of like minded women in business in the equine world. And I am just such a believer in helping others. I think the space can be competitive, but it doesn't need to be. Like, I'm just a firm believer in rising tides lift all boats. So find those people for you, like that women in
Mhm,
the business group that we met through. I mean, it's been
mhm,
phenomenal. So there are resources, and that doesn't cost a dime. So there are resources and groups out there that you
mhm.
can learn from and grow with. So find those people that lift you up and support your business and can just bounce ideas off of too. It's so valuable.
Yeah, 100%. I love that. Okay, what's your
Yeah.
final one for us, Grace?
Yeah, the last one. And again, this kind of goes back to thinking ahead. It's really difficult to think ahead, but I would encourage business owners to think about what an exit looks like for them. So many entrepreneurs don't think about what it looks like when it's time to either slow down or completely step away. And what I've found is the people that navigate that transition really well are the ones who started thinking about it way in advance. So years in advance. So
Mhm,
thinking, what does the business look like without me? Is there someone to take it over? And what am I working towards? Having some of those bigger picture questions to get you thinking ahead is really important. So, for some people, it's setting up their business in a way that it can run without them, having employees, setting up the systems and processes to have it continue on without them. And a lot of people, too, don't think that they could sell their business. So, thinking too, your business might be really valuable to someone. And so your business very well could be your largest financial asset, and you maybe just haven't put a number on it. I think that's really difficult as business owners to figure out what is the value of my business? Can I even sell it? But the sooner you start thinking about these things and running it accordingly, if you think there could potentially be an exit, run your business in a way that you're tracking the value and you could show it to a business evaluator, do evaluation, thinking ahead about what that exit looks like. I'm not saying you have to sell it, but think ahead. What does that look like for you? Are you building a business or are you just building a job? Because one of those you can sell, one of them you can't. So when the time comes, again, it goes back to the team. So when the time comes, if you do think you have an opportunity to sell, a CPA, an attorney, a business broker, those types of people can help you navigate that situation. So, and then it ripples, if you do sell your business, there's probably going to be a really big tax implication. So everything is so interconnected and there's ripple effects through it. So get your team and your people and think big about what your business can do, but think ahead on it as well. So that would be the last thing to leave people with for my, tips is think about what an exit looks like for you.
I love that. In my mind, I was thinking, Grace, about like begin with the end in mind.
Mm,
But even bigger picture, like, I think you took it even bigger picture, talking about, okay, beginning with the end in mind doesn't just mean what kind of money do you want in a retirement account when you do retire? It's like, what
mm,
does retirement mean to you? And what are the options on the table? I have a feeling for some listeners, they had never even considered the idea of selling their business. Some may be hoping to pass it on to kids. Those kids
mhm.
may not want it. What if then, right? What's the
Yeah.
plan B for what you've built up? And I love this idea of thinking big picture that it doesn't have to quote unquote just dissolve. There are other
Mhm.
options on the table that you can consider. So that's really solid advice, Grace.
There really are. Yeah, does that ever come up in folks that you work with thinking about I think you said it right, like, start with the end in mind in a way. So does that come up in your conversations with any of your clients?
I'm gonna start building. Here's what no, and here's a full more answer to that, because
Yeah.
oftentimes when I talk to them and I coach, 100% we're talking about what does success mean to you? And we're
Mhm.
looking, okay, in 5 years, or what does the business look like? I'll be honest, it's typically from the business function perspective or the function of what does a successful business look like?
Mm, mhm.
And most of my clients are not saying, "This is what it looks like when I exit. This is what the
Yeah.
end goal would be." And so I'm thinking about some of the questions that I ask and some of the ways to really think about that differently. 100%, they need help with the marketing and the business building and
Yeah.
growing to get to that point. And we do talk about your personal version of success.
Mhm.
I'm gonna build in, therefore, let's think about what does that mean and how many years, however many years that may be, let's keep that in mind as we're building it. I love that.
That's it, yeah. Well, and it's so similar with retirement. You have to envision what that is. I mean, so
Mm,
many people, they're like, "Well, I don't know what I can spend. Like, when can I even retire? How do I even answer
mhm,
that question when I just don't
mhm.
know?" And there are ways to kind of back into those numbers and things like the rule of 72. It can tell you, you can just get some ballpark numbers of what you think your nest egg is going to be at retirement. And I'll share another really simple kind of calculation to figure out. A lot of people just say, well, what can I afford? When can I retire? It depends on how much I want to spend. Because I'll get that question. People say, when can I retire? I say, well, maybe now, but how much do you want to or need to spend in
Yes.
retirement? It all comes down to that. So, a really kind of simplified, but also time and data tested answer to that is the 4% rule. So the rule goes along the lines of assuming you have a 30-year retirement, when you start retirement, you can safely withdraw 4% of your portfolio value in year one and then adjust it up for inflation every year and theoretically not run out of money. So that can give people just a really quick, kind of simple calculation to say, okay, I estimate my portfolio is valued X. I'm going to have a 30-year retirement. Take that portfolio value times 4%. And that is reasonably what you can draw out of that portfolio every year in retirement. And of course, there's also going to be things like maybe Social Security. You might have a pension. You might have a spouse or someone else that has those types of incomes coming in later in retirement. But the 4% rule is really a tried and true data tested number that gives people a really simple way to say, what can I actually afford to take out of my savings in
Mhm.
retirement? So the 4% rule.
That's solid. I really appreciate you sharing that here. I know you shared that with the Business Barn Collective and those tangible takeaways for those listening. Like, I want you to write that down, go to the show notes because those kinds of things will help you really answer some of these broad questions that feel big and feel overwhelming
Yeah.
when you sit down to think about it. But when you have just these formulas to help, it really is truly helpful. So, thank you for sharing that, Grace.
Yeah. It can be really simple. A lot of times people like to overcomplicate their money or their finances, and it doesn't always need to be that. Go back to basics. Don't get overwhelmed. Start with the simple things, have a plan, and be consistent.
Yeah. So simple and yet effective. I love it. Okay. Is there anything else, Grace, that you would love to share with my listeners of equine entrepreneurs before we go?
Yeah, I think the thing I'd want to end on is anybody who's made it in the equine world or as a business owner, you've demonstrated something that so many people have not been able to do, which is you've got the grit, you've got the discipline, you probably have the passion, you've got all those skills. And you just need to have the systems and plan in place that's built for you. So the same is true with financial security. It takes that grit, but you need the system and the process there. You don't have to have it all figured out. You just need to start. And the best financial plan isn't the perfect one, it's the one that you're going to follow. So that's what I would leave everybody with to end on here.
That's brilliant. So that's so good because I'm just in here going, I'm like, yes, that's the business part. Like that's marketing. That's each of those things, right? Because we get so caught up in thinking there is a perfect system and 100% culture, feeds into that. Sales and marketing, I will own, can sometimes feed into that. This is the one thing that changed everything. And the reality is it changed it because it changed how you showed up. It
Mhm.
changed a lot of things and therefore it worked for you, but it doesn't mean it's the only system that would ever work for anybody. So that's
Say that.
brilliant, Grace. That's really well said. I appreciate that.
I know my favorite answer whenever I get questions in my job, the answer is almost always, "It depends." That's just kinda how it
Right?
goes with finance and money and
Yes.
investments. So the answer is almost
Mhm.
always, "It depends," because it depends on you and what works for
Yeah.
you and your situation. So,
Yeah. No, that's
is
super
there
smart.
is there anything I missed that you want me to go into deeper? What else might be helpful? That's what I wanted to end on, but if there's anything
Yeah.
you think might be helpful to touch on again or reiterate, the floor is yours. Ask away.
So you're so brilliant. No, I honestly feel like I think that for the especially because it's podcasts, right? In the Business Barn
Yeah.
Collective, we were able to go deeper in a different, unique way because you can show
Mhm.
charts and we can't, it's not the same with the podcast. And I want people listening less than walking away with specific actual tangibles that they can do in terms of account creations and understanding accounts and things like that, which is very
Mhm.
important. But that's not the goal for this episode. Really, the goal for this episode is for people to start to think differently and
Mhm.
intentionally and strategically about retirement and how their business is connected. But as you so well said, their business is not the only thing connect that is leading into retirement. And they're not leaning 100% on just that one piece. And so
Mhm.
I feel like if that happens for those listening, then we've hit that goal. And then they're
Yeah.
able to take that and say, okay, what do I do now? Well, now I've got some resources from Grace my next question of course is to where they can find you because not only
Mhm.
do they have these resources, they have new ways of thinking. They have some great rules of thumb to follow and principles that they could do this. And also, like why I wanted you here is because I want people to know that you're available as somebody who can help specifically equine business owners to think through these things strategically. So, that's a wonderful question. But no, I believe you really hit the goal and gave us some really solid things to think about. And for the nitty gritty, right? For the jargony stuff, like you talked about, that we need to walk people through. That's why I want them to get on a call with you and get to know you and get those questions answered. So,
Yeah.
yeah, no,
That's
great.
better suited for a one-on-one for sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly, exactly. No, but no, I think that's super, super helpful. So, go ahead, Grace, if you would tell everyone where they can find you and connect with you, and then of course I will have the links and things on the show notes as well.
Yeah, I'm in all the places. So LinkedIn, I'm Grace Speckman. I also have an Instagram called Dollars and Horse Sense, and it's kind of meshing together the horse world and kind of the wealth management ideas. So follow along there. My website is meridianinvest.com. And then for anybody interested, any listeners today, I am offering a 20-minute AMA, Ask Me Anything call, but it's not about me. It's about the listeners. So
Sure.
it's your agenda, it's your questions. There's no pressure. I'm never going to pitch or sell. So if anybody could benefit by asking me anything on their mind, please reach out. You can find me on all those places I just mentioned. My email is also gspeckman@meridianinvest.com. So please reach out. I would love to help in any way I can. And Denise, to your point, I think the one-on-one is where you can get really into the specifics about what makes sense for you. So please take advantage of that. And then this is a newer one. I actually just wrote a white paper specifically tailored to equestrians, and it has some of my best ideas in tax planning, liability insurance, estate planning, all sorts of really good tangible case studies too. So if anybody would like a copy of that, please reach out to me, and I would love to send you a copy. So reach out on, LinkedIn, Instagram, email me, whatever works best. I've got that white paper and I'm really excited to start getting it into people's hands.
Oh, that's awesome. Yes, I didn't know about that. 100%.
Yeah.
Yes.
And
Please,
you
you
can
guys
link it
reach
too.
out.
I'll share
Yeah.
that with you
Okay,
too.
perfect. Yeah. Yes, we'll do that. Yes. But because, yeah, you're right. I know for those listening, they're going, there are certain nuances in my business that Grace doesn't understand. Well, number one, the principles she shared today apply no matter what. Let's just name that. And then also
Mhm.
for those nuances, take Grace up on her offer, you guys, and get on the phone and get on Zoom. And I know she's a wealth of knowledge. So that will be really
Oh,
helpful
thank
to you
you.
guys. Yeah. Thank you so much, Grace. I appreciate your
Yeah.
time. You sharing these practical tips really are very helpful, very solid. And so I hope that everyone listening takes the start now and takes that principle and really does start now.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Denise. This was a blast, and I am here if I can help anybody and any of your listeners in any way.
All right, friends, I hope you truly didn't just enjoy the episode, but found some practical things that you can immediately begin to apply in your business. Because if you're new here, I will tell you this that I will remind my listeners often, I will remind my listeners often that while it's helpful to learn all that we can, the beauty really comes when you take action. So I want you to find one thing that you learned from Grace today that you can apply in your business and then share it with me. Send me a note, find me on social media as Storm Lily Marketing. I would love to hear from you. And then, of course, go to the show notes and get the highlights, get the links, and go and get your free roadmap. It's completely free. It's going to come to your inbox and it's going to help you really identify the gaps that you can focus on and identify the ways that you can do more of the work you love. And just like Grace, you guys know I love to blend the strategy with the practical. So you can absolutely expect that in the roadmap. So just go to stormlily.com/map. Go and grab that, start taking action, and stay tuned and stay subscribed. I've got some new friends and new episodes coming up for you in the coming weeks. Have an awesome day, friends.